Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TOGCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tips, and your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Let's try that. Wow, how embarrassing is that? It just disappeared, but it's back. Great to see you all. It's Wednesday night. I'm fresh off the plane from Nashville. I'm trying to get caught up. Sorry. So, you know the drill. If you're here, if you're in the chat room and you're watching live, please let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. As always, Facebook, Twitter, they're the fastest way to go ahead and get the word out. You can go ahead and you can click that share button, which is right down underneath the video, right there, okay? Or you can go ahead and share the link, which I'm going to put into the chat window for you right now. It is TOG.chat/live. If you're a regular, you ought to know that by now. And of course, we've got people tuning in from all over the world here right now. We've got people from Norway. We've got Jim in Maine. Adam's here from out in the Midwest. Lynn from New York. I got Alan in Vancouver, Canada. Charles in Connecticut. Darren in Salt Lake. Cristiano in Brazil. We've got Anthony in Texas. John's here all the way from Seattle, Washington. Alvin in Virginia. John Cumber in Waterford, England. How cool, right? Small world. So please check in, leave a comment, and let me know you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. And of course, why are we here? To talk photography. So please, if you're gonna spend the 60 minutes, there's gotta be something that I can do or that we can crowdsource to try and help you improve your photography. So post a question, get started. As always, I will do my best to answer all of them during the next 60 minutes, okay? So I wanna start out with a little bit of news. How about if we do that first, right? Shall we do that? Let's hit the news.
Put down that camera.
I apologize. One of the keys in my little stream deck here, it's not working. So we're just gonna throw the stream deck away for the night and we'll do this manually. But I got a cool, kind of funny piece of news. And this is in the news, okay? So for those of you that are regulars, you will especially find this a little bit humorous, okay? So most of you have heard me talk in the past about a website called F-Stoppers. Now, I have had the good fortune in the past week or so to have several of photography blogs run an article about my DIY TV background setup. And I want to be really clear, like, I'm actually surprised that they've gone ahead and featured this video and they've written the article because, as you guys know, I've been pretty tough on the blogs. I think that it is, I believe sincerely that it's very important that we hold our media, our photography media, accountable for factual information and for making sure that they're really helping the community. And I've been very tough on these blogs. So the fact that they at least recognize the value of the content that I'm putting out, it is greatly appreciated. I want to be very, very clear, and I'm not trying to kiss butt here, but I, have never said that there is no value in the blogs. I have never said that they need to go away. I just want to see them really up their game. And we should all be trying to up our games. But the cool news behind this one is not the fact that they wrote the article. That's awesome. But I want to read for you a quote from this article. It's written by Robert Baggs. Robert, I've got to thank you. I'm honored. I have a feeling you haven't watched too many of my TOGCHATs, though. Robert makes a reference here as he's talking about the background. He goes on to say, in this video, Joe Edelman, the happiest photography educator I've ever seen, goes through some shots he's created using an LED television as a backdrop. So I want you to know, I'm going to get that printed on my business cards. It will be part of the intro next week. Joe Edelman, Olympus Visionary and happiest photo educator. There you go. So, but seriously, Robert, thank you so much. Also, I mean, since I'm making those mentions, it's worth noting that the folks at DIYphotography.net also went ahead and published a little article. I want to share those links with you guys so that you have them. Yeah, I kind of felt like I should write Robert maybe a little message and let him know that he clearly hasn't seen me talk about high-speed sync or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. Timber Geek, we getting a little crackle. Let's just make sure we're not clipping here. It's possible that we are. I'm gonna dial that back down. Let me know if that just took care of it. And if it didn't, I'll switch to another mic here. How's that? Okay, but yeah, give me a heads up. Let me know. All right. So that's actually all the news that I have for you this week. But let's go ahead. Let's get a couple announcements out of the way, and we'll dig in. All right, so what do I have for announcements? I got a couple of things. I told you guys last week that I am going to be presenting on February 12th. Still there? Okay, so I'll tell you what, guys. Bear with me one sec. I'm going to go ahead and switch. All right, I'm back. I apologize for that. I'm getting some messages from YouTube that I'm having some issues with their server, but I've never seen audio be the issue behind it. So let me know if you're hearing me okay now. Everything says that I'm up. Everything says that we are running. All right, Alvin says we're fixed. All right, cool. So we should be good. I apologize for that. I don't know what the deal is with audio tonight, but YouTube is showing some really weird signals coming back here. So anyway, basically, I've got a couple announcements. Actually, John just mentioned in the news. I wasn't going to deal with this too much tonight, but it's worth mentioning. Dynalite, maker of studio strobes, has filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They're done. They're closing their doors. It's all over. You know, I'll be honest with you guys, that's a problem. And I'm actually going to talk about that when I talk about Imaging USA, so I'll get to that. But so just a couple of things really quick, and then let's get into the Q&A, because let's face it, that's why everybody's here, right? So I mentioned that I'm going to be speaking at the B&H Depth of Field event coming up in exactly 19 days. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share the link with you guys here. You can also read about this on my website if you're not familiar with it. But here's the cool bit. This event happens on February 11th and 12th in New York. It's going to be at the New Yorker Hotel. It's a couple blocks away from where B&H is, the Mecca, right? And by the way, it's free. So if you visit the website that you see here on the screen, you can register now for free to attend if you can make it to New York. But if you can't, and I know we've got people here from all over the world, right? If you can't make it to New York, RSVP in advance to get free access to the live stream so that you can watch it live. And I want to show you guys, there's an amazing lineup of speakers. The two keynote speakers, one each day, Greg Gorman, Mick Rock. If you don't know who these two gentlemen are, come on, do a little research, okay? I mean, just amazing list of people. I'm really, really honored. They spelled my name wrong, but that's okay. We'll let it slide. It's going to be a great event. I'm really excited about it. Very honored to be in and amongst this crowd. So hopefully you will be able to set aside some time, watch this outstanding event. I've watched a lot of the talks from last year. They're available on YouTube, and really, really good. Definitely honored to be amongst this crowd. And of course, you can also get information about it on my website. If you click on the speaking and events page, which I'll give you the link for that, you should bookmark this page. That way you will always know when I am adding new speaking events and things coming up. But on this page, if you scroll down, you'll be able to click to register all the information regarding New York. After that, I'll be in Las Vegas the end of next month for WPPI. I'm going to be doing a masterclass at WPPI. And then 3 days down in Florida at the only college campus that I am aware of that actually has alligators on the campus. You walk around the campus and they actually have signs on campus. Beware of alligators. Do not feed the alligators. Like, alligators, college students. Is that really a good combination? Just saying, right? So anyway, all that information is there. Hopefully, I will get to see some of you in person, just like I did this past week at Imaging USA. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to our Q&A mode here, even though I still want to talk to you about Imaging USA a little bit, and mainly because a few people have already asked about Imaging USA. All right, so you know, because I told you last week, that I was going to Imaging USA in Nashville. I was there Sunday, Monday, and the event also ran Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, okay? Imaging USA, if you missed me talking about it before, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it is the annual convention / trade show that is put on by PPA. That's Professional Photographers of America. It is an outstanding organization. I highly encourage any of you in the United States, of course, who are planning to try to make money as a photographer. I highly encourage you to consider joining this organization. It's a little over $300 a year. However, included in that $300 per year membership, you have excellent educational and business resources. You get $15,000 worth of equipment insurance included in that price. You also have access to very reasonably priced liability insurance, and you get free legal advice, not free attorneys, but free legal advice in the event that you have a client come at you and you don't have a lawyer lined up and you're not sure where to turn. PPA has lawyers on staff who will talk to you about what's going on, give you advice about your initial responses, and point you in the direction of helping you find an attorney to represent you, etc. Great organization. And of course, when you do join PPA, your first Imaging USA is free for both the trade show and the educational track. So of course you have to pay to get there and pay for the hotel. Next year, it'll be the same weekend. It's going to be in Grapevine, Texas, right outside of Dallas. That's where it'll be next year. So I hope to see some of you there. But it was great. It's always a good conference. I use that word very specifically. I'll come back to that in a second. Also, it was great to be able to see quite a few folks that I know while I was down there. I did 3 really short presentations, one for the folks at V-Flat World, and the other 2 were representing Savage Universal, the folks that make the paper backgrounds, as well as RGB lighting, and that's what I was using, was RGB lighting. And I did those presentations at the Pixel Connection booth. So definitely a good time, a lot of fun. It's always great to catch up with people. A few questions have come in regarding Imaging USA, and so I want to just slide back up here, and we'll try and hit those first. So Anthony here, and I'm also going to tell you guys a couple of these questions are actually going to make me feel real guilty. You'll understand why in a second. Anthony's question is, what is the most beneficial thing that you can share for those of us that couldn't make Imaging USA 2020? So first of all, full disclosure, I barely made it around the full trade show. Inevitably, that happens with me. Usually, if the Olympus booth is there, especially, I'm like tied to the booth, and that's where people come to meet me and see me. So I frequently do the trade shows and don't actually see the whole trade show. I was very fortunate this one, since I was not tied to one booth. I did get to see quite a bit of the show, but I will also tell you, I went to the show with an agenda, meaning there were some specific people that I needed to find, have conversations with, that I wanted to meet, introduce myself to. There were a few brands that I wanted to talk to because I am interested in using their products, and certainly I want to see if I can, levy some of my influence with possibly getting the gear cheaper, right? And also there were some connections and contacts that I was tasked with making at the show on behalf of the marketing team at Olympus for some future events that we are working on that I'm involved with. So I had a lot going on in that regard. I will tell you these things. Looking through the show guide and the program guide. So the show guide includes both the trade show information, the floor maps, and all the exhibitor information, but also the listing of all the classes, the courses. The one thing that PPA does year after year after year, and does it truly better than any other event in the country, it was an amazing educational track. So if you were there for the conference, taking classes, outstanding lineup of speakers, outstanding topics and an outstanding range of topics. So believe me, folks, if you're looking to make money as a portrait or wedding photographer, I really, really sincerely encourage you not only join PPA, but also make sure that you make it to at least one Imaging USA. And if you can make multiples, you should go every year. You really should. It's very, very worth it. The trade show this year, I was very, very happy about the trade show. Let me explain why. Last year, Imaging USA was in Atlanta. In fact, it was right across the street from the Super Bowl, the week before the Super Bowl. So the town was kind of crazy at that point in time. But the trade show was really not good last year at all. It was very light. I believe last year it was just Sony with a small booth, very small booth, Canon with a very small piece of their normal booth, like the stage portion. Fuji may or may not have been there. I honestly don't remember last year. And Panasonic had literally this tiny little booth with a couple counters. Like that was it. And the trade show, maybe the hall was too big. I don't know, but it just felt very sparse. It just simply did not feel like there was much there in the show. And in terms of things that were new or exciting or interesting, there honestly just wasn't a lot going on last year. This year, completely different vibe, very different feel. The trade show, very busy. Day one is always the busiest, in part because it's on a Sunday. The reason why they do PPA's imaging on a Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, for those of you that might be wondering, like, why would they pick those days? Wedding photographers in particular usually work weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. So a wedding photographer, a full-time wedding photographer will usually take Monday and Tuesday as their weekend. That becomes their weekend. So those are days that make more sense for wedding and portrait photographers that run studios to be able to attend events like that, right? But day one, trade show was definitely busier than Monday and Tuesday, but not dramatically. It wasn't like it was a ghost town on Monday and Tuesday at all. And definitely by the time you got to the afternoon, mid-afternoon in particular, the show was very busy. The other thing that they did that I think was very wise, they pushed back the opening time of the expo. The expo didn't open until 11:30 each day. So that gave people time to be able to attend workshops and classes prior to that. There's also all kind of photo walks. They held the event this year at the Gaylord Opryland Resort, which is kind of like right outside Nashville. It's not far from the airport. This is like a whole town under one roof. It's incredible if you ever have a chance to go there. So the cool part is, it was freezing. I mean, literally the temperature was like 31, 32 degrees in Nashville, but you could do outdoor shoots in the Gaylord, and it's like 80 degrees. It was awesome, right? So they opened the trade show a little bit later, which I think was also very beneficial. And then, from there, so it was a shorter window that was open. The crowds really, really upbeat. Again, I don't know if it was a smaller room than what they had in Atlanta, but the room felt more full. Typical of what you frequently find in trade shows, there was one back corner that was kind of thin and emptied out, but all in all, it was pretty good. Camera manufacturers, again, very light. Nikon, Olympus, not in attendance. That was no secret. That's a normal thing. Nikon generally doesn't do it. Olympus has kind of done it hit or miss over the years. Sony had the largest of the photography booths, and they had singers that you could photograph and some models. Fuji had a small booth. Panasonic had a small setup. But that's essentially what you had for camera manufacturers. And the other thing that you get at Imaging USA that you don't get at shows like Photo Plus is you get a lot more vendors that are dedicated towards photo albums, towards newborn photography, props, things along those lines, printing, all that kind of stuff, because obviously for portrait and wedding photographers, those categories are much, much more important. The upcoming show in Las Vegas, WPPI, will also have more vendors for photo labs and printing and albums and things like that than what you get at the New York show, which is kind of a little bit more generalized. So all in all, I mean, I think that, it was really, really good to see the show being very vibrant this year. Last year, to me, it just felt like it was potentially looking at a slowdown. The event was a little bit more spread out last year, which I think also, kind of impacted it feeling a little bit thinner in that regard. And, full disclosure, I may have felt that way because I only actually did one talk last year and, just kind of wandered around a little bit. So I was in and out pretty quick. This year, at least being there for the 2 days, saw a little bit more of it, got to talk to a few more people. But definitely, so Anthony, I know that's not exactly what you asked me, but I think the most beneficial thing that I would say is that, number one, contrary to all the crap that we hear on YouTube, in general, the industry was showing very, very positive signs of life at this show. Imaging USA is not a show where traditionally we see a lot of brand new gear or revolutionary announcements or anything like that. So you don't go to Imaging expecting that. You go to Imaging, really, most photographers, PPA photographers that go, they're on a mission. Like, they have specific vendors they want to see. They have specific product lines they want to see. An amazing amount of people actually purchased gear at that show from retailers like the Pixel Connection. B&H was there this year. Drury's, another retailer from the Midwest. I think Dot Camera was there also. Procam was there. Sorry, Procam. So there was a lot of equipment being purchased and accessories and things like that. More than anything, I think what I would kind of share with all of you, not so much just about imaging. There is one piece of gear that I saw that was really cool, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But I think that I would share simply the fact that if you have the opportunity to attend a photographic trade show, you need to do it for a lot of reasons. Number one, you'll be amazed at what you will learn. It's kind of the I don't know what I didn't know. Walking through these trade shows and looking booth after booth at some of the accessories and things that are there, you stumble upon things that you never knew existed. It's maybe a little bit different for me. I've been in the industry for, 50 years and I do this full time and everything. So there's not a lot of surprises for me. But for most people, they come to the trade show and they'll walk past a Manfrotto booth, or they'll walk past a booth selling Godox or Profoto or whatever. And they see things like, my God, I didn't know there was such a thing. That's amazing. And that changes the game for them. It gives them ideas. It helps them solve problems by finding a piece of gear that's going to improve their workflow. And then, of course, the educational aspect of it. One of the things that is happening is a growing trend at trade shows. More and more and more vendors, not just the camera companies, but even the smaller vendors, like in this case, the Pixel Connection. At the Pixel Connection booth, we had Susan Allen, who is a Panasonic ambassador, Peter Hurley, who is a Canon Explorer Light and a Profoto ambassador, Tracy McGlosky, Profoto ambassador, and Olympus Visionary, myself, and the list goes on. They had quite a few speakers just at the Pixel Connection booth alone. Okay, and of course, it's worth mentioning. Some of you, if you follow me on Instagram and you pay attention to my Instagram stories, and you were following it while I was there, you realize that there were quite a few YouTubers there. So if you want to meet your favorite YouTubers, Manny Ortiz was there, Jessica Kobiesi was there, Miguel Giles was there. Who am I missing? I know I'm missing somebody that's important. I was there. Mr. Lanier was walking around. Not sure what, but he was there. And there was somebody else I saw too. But anyway, so we all kind of have little reunions along the way and have some fun. Manny and Jessica and myself, had a little bit of fun, and all that was on the Instagram stories. So all in all, it's a good time. And the best part of it is everybody's a photographer. Everybody's passionate about photography. There is a tremendous amount of camaraderie and sharing of information and knowledge. So for me, I think that's honestly probably the biggest reason to attend and to go to any of these shows. Okay? All right. So I do have some other questions here. Let's get into some of the stuff that can help you guys solve some problems, right? From Orthus, when using my key light on one side most of the time, I use it on camera right. Is there a rule to decide which is the best side, or is it up to me? Well, there's one bad word in your question there, so that's the word I'm going to stick on, and then we can kind of solve your problem here. That word is rule. First of all, it's a 4-letter word. Remember what your mama taught you. Don't use 4-letter words. I hate 4-letter words, and I hate rules, okay? So for me, my rule of thumb is where the nose goes, the key light goes. Wherever the nose is, that's where the key light's going to go. Now, even that's not it must be that way. That is my general portrait lighting type setup. If I want to create broad light or short light, or if I want to do something that's extra dramatic or I'm going for some kind of effect, well, that could change that. My recommendation to you, Orthos, is instead of, at this point, based on your question, instead of worrying about which is right, what I would encourage you to first do is focus on not doing the same thing all the time or most of the time. Unless you are very experienced in what you're doing, unless you are getting hired routinely for a very specific style and a look, you need to be experimenting. You need to be trying many different things. And part of that process of trying many different things is actually failing. It's putting the light someplace that's not intuitive. If you normally, have the nose here and you put the light here, well, maybe try putting the light over here while the nose is here and photograph it and see if maybe with a small turn back you can make it look better. With enough of a turn back, maybe if you raise the light, you get Rembrandt lighting. Experiment with different things to get a sense of, number one, simply what will happen. It's the what if factor. You want all of those what ifs in your visual database. That's experience for photographers. That way, in the future, as you look at a scene, as you look at a subject, as you look at your light placement, you know what's going to happen, and you know what's probably not a good idea compared to what is a good idea. So that's what I would focus on first, and not worry so much about, should I mix it up? Should it be the same? Which side's the better side? Which side's the better side, in my opinion, the way I shoot, is based on where's my subject looking. Beyond that, it's simply about making it flattering. I personally don't do a lot of lighting that is not flattering or is dramatic or zombie-like, which some people do, and there's reasons for doing that. That's okay. I don't do a lot of that. My light tends to be always geared towards being flattering, have some kind of a beauty feel to it. So that's why where the nose is, that's where the key light is. Okay? Next up here, let's see. And Timber Geek added into that. Indeed, I've been mostly camera left, not sure it's because I like it more, because my computer chair, side table, gels, etc. is camera right. And I will tell you guys both, we all fall into those kind of habits. I have done the same thing myself early on in my career. You will realize bad habit, right? In part because every subject's different, and in part because if you do that for too long, then you're going to reach a point where, honestly, your work just becomes boring. It's predictable. Okay, there's a difference between people being able to look at your work and identify that it is potentially yours, as compared to people looking at your work and not only knowing that it's yours, but knowing exactly how you did it, because you do it exactly the same way every single time, right? To me, that's boring. There are some case uses where that makes sense and that's acceptable. Actually, I'll give you a great example. Since I met the man and spent some time watching him this weekend, Peter Hurley. He uses that same type of triangle lighting setup for the overwhelming majority of his work. That's not bad, and that doesn't mean he's not creative, and that certainly doesn't mean his headshots aren't good. They're great. In the category of acting headshots, that lighting arrangement works wonderfully. It makes a lot of sense. And the primary, I shouldn't say primary, the most important element of those acting headshots, it's not lighting. And it's not the pose, because most of his headshots, he just has the person straight ahead, real simple. We're not doing any, fancy this kind of stuff, right? It's just person just straight ahead. He's working on the personality. That's what he's really building in, okay? So certainly there are reasons why you could do that or might want to do that, but for the most part, you want to mix it up. You definitely want to have some of that, that variety, okay? Another one from Anthony here. I know that you go to several photography events per year. Do you take the time to visit other photographers to see what they're doing that can maybe help you with new ideas? Okay, please keep this in context, right? Rarely is my answer. So let me throw a couple pieces of information at you that you guys have heard me talk about before. And so if I tie them all together, I think, Anthony, this will make a lot of sense for you. Number one, when I was younger, I did study heavily images that I would see in the magazines. Remember, there was no internet because I grew up in the dark ages. So, every month, Popular Photography magazine, Modern Photography, and then, oh gosh, what was it? I can't even remember the name of the other one now. Son of a gun. But anyway, there were a couple of photography magazines that they came regularly, and I used to love looking at magazines like Life and Look I was a big geek with Time magazine and even Sports Illustrated for the photos. So I would study those magazines to try to learn and get a better understanding of what the photographers were doing, how they were doing it, etc. As I got older and realized that I wasn't nearly as creative as I thought I was visually with the camera, okay? I don't mean, let's use a TV behind the person. That's problem solving, right? So it's creative in that sense. But visually, I realized, like, look, I'm not going to be the greatest photographer that ever lived. I'm not going to be some, Henry Cartier-Bresson or any of that kind of stuff. So I reached a point where I stopped looking at other photographers' work. Now, just existing in today's world, scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Facebook, driving down the road, billboards, whatever, it's impossible to escape photography, right? But I try very strongly not to not to follow other photographers' work. And to the extent that I do, it's kind of very casual. In other words, it's, I may see somebody's byline go by from time to time and certainly have the realization that, okay, wow, I can recognize that person's work. That's, what they usually do. That's their look. Or better yet, if it's a younger photographer, their look's not really changing. They're doing basically the same kind of style and feel. And here's why. I realized as I got older and I had more experiences, one of the struggles that I had as a photographer, I would go into too many jobs and too many assignments with a preconceived notion of how it should turn out. Now, when did this become a problem? It became a problem in 2001. I had the opportunity to go back and do some freelancing in the newspaper world. So for about 3 years, I freelanced as a stringer, was what it's called, for the Morning Call here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And in the middle of that time period, for 6 months, I actually worked full-time for them to fill in for another photographer that was on medical leave. When I started up doing newspaper work again at that point, because prior to that, I stopped doing newspaper work in 1986. Been quite a while, right? When I started doing newspaper work again, I would get an assignment to go and photograph a high school soccer game or go and photograph an art opening in an art gallery. And I was making a very fatal mistake of remembering when I had done that before. And walking in with the idea like, oh, I know exactly what to do. I'm going to do this, this, and this will be my picture. Wonderful. And then, of course, what happens? You get there, and you can't do this, this, and this for any number of reasons because the circumstances are different, yada, yada, yada. And then you're actually like stuck because you've got locked into your mind visually. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to create. This is how it's going to happen. And then you can't. And then you're fighting yourself. So that experience really taught me, it's like, stop. Keep your mind a blank slate as much as possible. And just realize that every time you pick up that camera, you have to challenge yourself to look at things differently. So that's my reason. If I was advising some of you who are following me and listening right now, if you are beginners or even intermediate to advanced photographers, I would encourage you to indeed follow some photographers' work. However, you have to hold yourself accountable. If there is something that photographer is doing that you really like, if there's something that photographer is doing that you say, oh my God, I love that style, I wish I could do that, that's great. But understand, they own it. It's theirs. So your task is work to copy it and then master it. But then you have to find a way to make it unique to you. Period. Right? And there was an interesting article in a British magazine a few weeks back, and I'm planning a video on this topic, and it's the idea of, do we really own our own creative ideas? And the younger version of me, I'll give you an example from imaging. The younger version of me would have gotten very upset at this. The current version of me was really excited, and actually made me feel really good. 2 years ago, at ImagingUSA, on stage in front of Scott Kelby. If you were following that, you remember Scott Kelby was sitting in the front row when I did my very first presentation for Olympus. I was nervous. There had been all kind of technology problems with the audio and also the tethering setup that day. So I wasn't even using my camera. I was fairly new to Olympus. They handed me Tracy McGloskey's camera because they were having problems with the cord, but for some reason her camera would connect to the tether, yada, yada. So I go on stage, and one of the shots that I did that Mr. Kelby tweeted about, and people thought was really cool, I had this beautiful model who was a former Miss Tennessee in the Miss America pageant, and I took a big piece of blue material, and I threw it over her head, and like a veil, and got under it myself, shot with a 45mm lens, so I'm fairly close, with the light outside the material, and did a series of beauty shots shooting with the material kind of wrapped around her face and creating this soft frame, and her hands are just kind of, coming through the material. If you watch the recap videos, I think it's day 1 or day 2 from Imaging USA, one of the presenters, I don't know which one, but one of the presenters that was presenting a class in the educational track on stage did that same idea with the bride and groom. Maybe they saw me do it 2 years ago. Maybe somebody else did it and I've never seen it. But I thought, you know what? If they saw me do it, awesome. I helped somebody with an idea, and that's cool. They could take it and they're making it their own. They're giving it their own spin. So, there's a point where following other photographers, trying to mimic what they do, trying to learn the concepts, outstanding, Anthony. But there is also a point where you've got to be honest with yourself, where it is time to kind of diverge and really work on building your own creativity. And for me, especially in the last maybe 4 to 5 years, the big key to making that work is not studying a lot of other people's photography, but really embracing failure. When I talk about this idea of don't be afraid to suck and embrace failure, that's not just because it sounds cool. It's not. It is my working methodology. Even I know Tennessee Rick's here. I know Chuck Hill's here. You guys saw my demos that I did with the Savage lights this past weekend. There was plenty of failure involved just to get to one picture, right? It's the process that I wanted people to see, and really those talks were designed to make people realize there's so many different ways that you can light things, that you shouldn't lock yourself into kind of one set of ideals. So I think that's really the key to that. The best answer is going to be a little bit different for everybody, but you definitely have to hold yourself accountable in the creativity aspect. Okay. GNAP Studios. What is the best way to put gels on a Godox 8200 inside a softbox? Also, what is the best way to organize your gels? Well, so GNAP, the first challenge here is it depends upon what gels you're using, right? So that's the first thing. So what I would do here, let me just switch over to the browser, see if we can get the, oh, son of a gun, that's not what I wanted. Let's do this here. And there we go. So this is the MagMod site. Actually, let me switch over one more tab here, and I'm going to take your question off the screen for a second. So the way that I do it, GNAP, is I use these, sorry, let me get the question out of your way here. There we go. I use these S-clamps for Godox, where you're basically clamping the Fresnel head down inside of it, and then you can put a Bowens mount, right? Okay. Now, you see how they have the speed light kind of just pushed through a little bit? What I do when I want to put gels inside the softbox is I use the mag grip. So I'm going to push the speed light through, the 8200. I'm going to push it through a little bit further so that I can put a mag grip on it. So let me find a mag grip here. View all products. For those of you that aren't familiar, the mag grip is this little gadget that you're seeing right here. And it's basically like a big rubber band with magnets on the edges. Slides over the top of the Fresnel head, and then using the mag gel holders, I can put the gel over top of it, and I can do that inside a softbox or inside an umbrella, etc. So it's all about that S-clamp. That's the trick for me. And then as far as organizing my gels, because I use all the MagMod gels at this point, I use the mag wallets. They're awesome. Okay, I actually have like 4 or 5 of them because I also have a set of gels that I travel with as well. So those are the ones that I use. And then if you go all the way back to my video about home studios, if I'm using the 12 by 12 gels, which I still use for some situations, those are like just the gel sheets, hanging on the side of a work cabinet in my studio, I have a long strip of Velcro. And then On each of the gels, what I do is I attach a 2 little tabs of Velcro on either side of the gel. And that allows me to do two things. If it's going on a 7-inch reflector, I can just basically mount the gel over the 7-inch reflector on the 2 little dots of Velcro. And then when I'm done with it to hang it up, I just hang it on the strip that's hanging down the side of the cabinet, which allows me to store them and organize them by colors, etc. So that's how I handle it, GMAT. But I hope that helps. Okay. All right. I'm scrolling down here to the next one. Let's see. Timber Geek. I've got a challenge, but it's not on topic for portrait photography. All right, so let's see what we got here. Do I have any tricks to eliminate highlights and reflections from a polished stone sphere? Sure. Avoid point light sources. Avoid small light sources. Don't use direct light. And I wouldn't even use a softbox because softboxes tend to have hotspots. So what I would use, and literally you could do it as simple as like those lighting tents that they have for eBay, but to make your own, you all know what V-flats are, right? They're the the big pieces of foam core that stand up and you can put them in a V. Well, just go to the dollar store if it's a stone and get some dollar versions of the white foam core, the 20 inches by 34 inches. And you're going to aim your light. So like, let's say you've got stone, okay, and then white board, and you're going to aim your light into the board so that it lights the stone. Or, have the board above, maybe put a hole through it to shoot through it, and then you put your lights up to the board, etc. Your goal is for something like that is to not have point light sources. You want your light to be as big as possible in relationship to the object. The bigger and smoother and even the light source, the better result that you will get on your subject. It's much like shooting metals, glass, all that type of stuff. It's highly polished, reflective surface. That's essentially what you're going to be dealing with. Okay. John Cumber, when shooting indoors or in a studio, would you cut out all ambient light so that you only get the light from your flashes or strobes? If you wanted to say Rembrandt light, for example. It really depends, John. So first of all, if your lights don't have modeling lights, then cutting out the ambient light doesn't matter in terms of what you see. In terms of shooting, if you're using strobes, you should pretty much be overriding the ambient light almost automatically, because for portrait lighting, if you've got your strobes 3 to 5 feet away, even if they're just speed lights, you're going to easily overpower the ambient. So if we're just talking about overpowering the ambient, John, my answer is yes, always overpower the ambient. If you're doing portrait lighting, light it. You don't want any ambient involved. If this is simply a matter of seeing it with your own eyes, well then of course that's only going to happen if you have modeling lights on the strobes. So I'm not sure that I answered what you're actually asking me. If I missed it, John, please type more. But hopefully that is the answer you were looking for there. So GNAP Studios. So how many tips for getting the black pupils on a model smaller and the iris color large without blinding them in the studio? Just a bright light. You can have a bright light without blinding somebody. Actually, just like I was talking about the polished stone, you could simply put like an umbrella or a reflector back here and shine a bright light into it. Like it doesn't have to shine at them. Shine a bright light into it. So as they're looking at you, that light's right there. That's going to help constrict. So yeah, I mean, I do that frequently in my studio now because I have those big windows that face north. So they don't get direct sunlight, but they're bright. So when I'm doing headshots or that, I make sure that my subjects are seated looking towards those big windows. And I'm still lighting them, and doing my own thing with the light. That window's not impacting my lighting at all, but it's enough to keep the pupils constricted so that I get more color. So yeah, it's just, you can create a bright light to constrict the pupils without blinding your subjects. And I will tell you guys, fingers crossed, I'm going to be doing a lot more with LED lights. I want to. I'm trying to work out a deal with a company, to be perfectly honest, because the ones that I want to use are really, really pricey. I'm not going to name them right now. But I want to do it for two reasons. One, because there's some benefits to me working with the LEDs in terms of producing the videos and showing you guys what I'm doing. But also, two, we're that close. We're getting to the point where strobes are going to become kind of special use only. I really do believe that. We're reaching a point where there's actually more value to having constant lighting, and we've got lights that can provide the kind of light that we need. Certainly, there will always be situations, at least for the foreseeable future, that LEDs are not going to be able to manage, like stopping really fast action, things like that, right? So I'm not saying strobes are going away. This is not a sky is falling. I don't have enough gray hair, none of that, right? Just saying. But yeah, we're reaching a point where there's a really good argument, even for portrait and wedding photographers, to be looking at using exclusively LEDs as opposed to strobes. It's close, folks. So yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to show you guys a little bit more of that in the near future and really give you some things to think about there. Don't worry, you don't have to go out and buy all new lighting, and you don't need to sell your strobes. No. But it is understanding that as you are building your lighting systems and you're looking to the future, don't assume that everything's about strobes. I can sincerely see a future where strobes will be the specialized lighting and LEDs will be the standard for the bulk of portrait and wedding work. I can definitely see that potential coming. Okay. Let's see. Adam, working with images and applying any type of noise reduction, is there a point in the workflow where it's most effective? Adam, I'll be honest with you, I never do noise reduction, ever. Now, again, as you guys have heard me say, I subscribe to the philosophy that photography requires light, so I always make sure I have light. And some of you are going to say, but I can't for this reason, that reason. Okay, fine. I guess part of what I'm saying, I'm the wrong guy to ask. You know who I would talk to about that? I would post that question for my friend Umistinda at Pixin Perfect. My guess, if I had to do it tomorrow, Adam, I think my approach would actually be to do, and this is a completely uninformed answer, folks, right? So I'm being honest with what I know and what I don't know. My initial gut response would be to do it at the end, similar to the way we do sharpening. Because of the way that noise reduction works, there's a softening / sharpening, then resharpening effect. Sometimes you do a little heavy-handed. Sometimes you don't like the result a week later. If you do it in the very beginning and then you've done all this retouching and everything else, you've wasted a lot of time, right? Now, the caveat to that, why I said, look, I don't know for a fact. Certainly there's the possibility that there are some benefits to using only the noise retouching in the raw generators, or the noise reduction in the raw generators like Camera Raw or Capture One. That's where I am not an expert and not positive, in part because I hardly ever do it. But yeah, if I needed to do something tomorrow, Adam, and I didn't have a resource to check with, I would do it at the end. It would be one of my last steps. I would do it similar to the way you do sharpening. It would be like the last thing before my output, whether that output is going to be to the internet or to a print. That's how I would approach it. Okay. Cristiano, how do you mix ambient and flashlight without being evident that you're using flash if you use a speed light on top of the camera? Well, basically, you can't. I mean, honestly, let's just bring it down to be real. You're not going to make it so that you can't tell there's a flash involved. But what you have to be asking is, who are you worried about them telling? You, the photographer, or your client? Most clients don't know, don't care, right? They just don't. They either love the outcome or they dislike the outcome. But you probably haven't had too many clients say to you, I don't like it when I can tell that there was flash mixed with ambient light. I've never had a client tell me that, ever. So that being said, remember, the thing that you're kind of struggling with here is your own photographic taste, and then, of course, possibly something that you read on YouTube or, whatever, okay? But essentially, the way that you're going to minimize that effect of it being like flash, the goal is match the ambient and the flash as closely as possible. So in other words, the more flash overpowers the ambient, the more obvious it will become. So the more you can just get them balanced, the better. Really, in most cases where you're using a little bit of balanced flash, what you really want is you want to get a little something going on in the eyes. So even just to pop up that little tiny card on the back of the flash, just to get a little pop forward, that's oftentimes all it takes to really make your lighting nice. But essentially, to the trained eye, meaning another photographer, they're going to know. I mean, and who cares? I don't care if they know. But That's all a matter of taste. But I would be really surprised, Cristiano, if you had clients tell you that, unless you're kind of going overboard and it simply just looks like you're using flash, and then, well, okay, maybe they don't like, maybe they don't like the way the flash looks. Okay. All right. So, Lynn, happy photographer. Does this mean you can't ever rant again during TOGCHAT? Highly unlikely that I will never rant again at some point. I'm sure I probably will. All right, let me get past all the static things here. John had mentioned earlier, and I touched base on this, Dynalite filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They're closing down operations immediately. This is the balance, folks. This is the balance that we all have to be aware of. And it's a double-edged sword, right? It is not my problem to make sure that any company makes money, except my own, right? It is not your problem to make sure that Dynalite survives, or Godox survives, or ProPhoto survives, or any of that. But, at the same time, we have to realize that these companies exist. These companies that provide us this gear, they exist to make money. First and foremost, they're not there because they love photography and they're really nice, and they have to make money. They have bills to pay. They have staff to pay, etc. Okay? So, all this stuff that I have been ranting about lately about, the sky is falling crap, the misleading headlines, the misleading statements, the completely unfactual statements that are happening on YouTube, the blog stuff with all the anxiety and this and that. Like, every time you watch that stuff, every time you read that stuff, every time, worse yet, that you comment on it or interact about it, you are furthering that message, which damages the companies. It hurts their bottom line. It hurts their ability to make sales and make money. And when that happens, the only people that suffer are us, you and me. We pay higher prices for the gear that we get, or, like with Dynalite, they go out of business. Boom. Now, sure, are there other factors? Is it up to these companies to get smarter? Is it up to these companies to figure out better ways to be more efficient and to be able to maximize their profits? Yes. Is it up to these companies to be able to figure out better ways to market and communicate? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it is okay for any of us to just cavalierly say that, a company's going out of business, or this system is dying, or this crop is going on. Stop. Why not just focus on your photography? Right? That's my point. So I'm not blaming any of you specifically, but it's a great example. I mean, Dynalite, unfortunately, as of, shall we say, yesterday, since they went out of business today, or the day before, but before they went out of business, is a company with a long-standing history of high-quality lighting equipment. They've served thousands and thousands of photographers for many decades, and it's really, really unfortunate. Ultimately, it's their fault, their problem. But we have to understand that the more of this stuff that we see go by the wayside, we suffer. Because even, let's just say that hypothetically the industry boiled down to two people making strobes, Godox and ProPhoto. That's bad. That's bad, right? I love the Godox system. I use it. ProPhoto, as much as I wish they were less expensive, every time I talk about ProPhoto, I tell you it's the best lighting equipment on the market from a quality standpoint. Hands down. Not a debate. It would be horrible for either of those companies to go away. Right? So it's not about, let's pound on somebody, let's trash them, let's this. No, we need them to survive. Same with the camera companies. If Nikon goes out of business, if Canon goes out of business, if Olympus goes out of business, the entire industry suffers. Because I hate to tell you guys, I don't care if you like 4/3 or not, Olympus generates more new technology in the digital era for cameras than any other brand. They have been at the forefront of more new development than any other brand. That's a fact. So you don't want that company to go away, even if you don't like their sensor sizes, right? So that's the thing we got to understand, gang. I mean, and we all have a part in that, because it's our own survival. It's to our own benefit for those companies to succeed. That doesn't mean you buy every new product they put out. It doesn't mean you buy every new thing. It doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable for good gear. Of course we do. But it also means we don't make it harder for them to make money in the process. We worry about our needs. We focus on our needs. We make our purchases accordingly. DIY as much as you can. Buy what you have to. But then let the companies go about the business of making money, right? That's it. So anyway, let's see here. Scrolling on down. Adam Farr, seeing some price increases for photo gear. Any perspective on tariffs, shrinking markets, other? Actually, Adam, I should have read your question before I just did that little rant. All the above, man. I think a lot of it has to do with the tariffs. I think a lot of it has to do with shrinking markets. Keep in mind, gang, all prices have to go up eventually, right? They just do. You know, cost of living goes up, inflation goes up. So it's, you know, it's a guarantee. It's going to happen. I haven't seen, or I should say, I haven't been seeing any massive increases, but sure, we're seeing increases, and it's the beginning of the year. It's to be expected. We're going to see some of that. So, I do, I do think that kind of stuff will happen. So, all right, let's see here. Scrolling on down. Let's see, spinning wheels photography. You might have done this in your early years, making a notebook with your trials and fails and things that are useful. I didn't spinning wheels, but honestly, it's not a bad idea. Now that I'm older, smarter, and I have a spouse who is a lifelong educator, I know that that's strictly a matter of preference. I hate notes in notebooks because, number one, my handwriting sucks. Number two, I just hate having to write all kind of stuff down. And then number three, I can't carry them with me, so I don't have them available. Now, granted, I could do it on my phone, and take notes. But in the moment, I never check that stuff. Fortunately, I have a pretty good memory for things that matter. So, the kind of notes that I take are things that are going to prompt me, but that's about it. If it works for you, I know a lot of people, especially today's younger generation, they love notes. They love notebooks. They love journaling, all that kind of stuff, and referring back to it. If it works, absolutely. Don't ever let anybody tell you that's the wrong way to do it, because it really is. It really is different for everyone. Okay, so. John Cornicello, American Photography. That was the magazine I was thinking of. Thank you. So it was Pop Photo, Modern Photo, and American Photo. Yep, that was it. So, Troy Hall, how do you light the presenter at events, considering that you can't have the lights closer? I can't imagine a 300-watt CFL LED being strong enough. Yeah, I mean, probably not, Troy. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of variables in there that obviously I don't have, so it's impossible for me to say, what are we calling close, what kind of distance. Keep in mind, even just having a 300-watt LED aimed at somebody on a stage, it's actually going to be an obnoxiously bright light, which is also going to be a really harsh light, even though it's going to be dim. So depending on the situation, I would still probably be inclined to go natural light and just, bump my ISO. But yeah, I mean, it's going to vary by situation, unfortunately. So, Chuck had a follow-up here in ImagingUSA. I felt it was more of an adjustment rather than a failure. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about this year, I think it was a very, very positive adjustment. And last year was very worrisome, scared me, but I was really, really glad to see kind of the rebound and the changes this year. So, Tom, out of interest, when you're not doing paid jobs for other people, do you often print your own work for your own house? If so, have you experimented much outside of the standard paper prints to metal? So I do. I have a big Epson printer, one of the 8000s, does really nice large prints. I don't print nearly as much as I should. I'm not gonna lie. We all need to print more, folks. All of us. You need to print more. Preferably do it yourself, but if not, at least send it out to a lab. Spend the money, invest the money, make it important to have prints. Okay? And I'm guilty. I'm everybody's guilty as most of the rest of you, right? Tom, I have not done a lot of printing on metal. I do like the metallic paper that's got that little bit of metallic vibe to it. But I have not actually, I don't think I've ever actually had any of my images printed on metal, at least not that I'm aware of. But I do tend to kind of like that metallic type paper from time to time. And I use all the Epson papers that go with my printer. I do realize that there are some, outstanding, other papers out there, but I don't have enough time to dedicate to the printing process to really experiment and explore like I really would like to. So let's see here. And let's see what else we got going. I want to try and get one or more two in. So Michael, might you be doing some black and white portraiture or have, and I missed it? I do black and white portraiture all the time, Michael. Check out my my Instagram profile. All of my Instagram, here, I'll switch over real quick and I'll show you guys. All of my Instagram posts, Michael, are little mini lessons, okay? Meaning that you can click on them and so let's see, hit browser, there we go. So is it gonna switch or no? Let's see, let's try this one more time, sorry. I'll do it this way, web browser. All right, so if you go to my Instagram profile, and so instance, this second picture right here, which is a black and white shot, if you click on that and then do the swipe right thing, you know, or click right, you'll always find lighting diagrams, camera and tech specs, behind the scenes stuff, all that kind of thing. So there's a black and white one here, similarly. So I don't have a specific, there's in the studio, you can see the setup with the V-flats. I don't have a specific video that I have done recently on black and white, but I routinely do black and white. I love black and white, absolutely. Okay. All right. So let's see here. And let's see if I can get one more question in. I see a lot of you saying thank you for various things. Please don't think I'm ignoring those. I do see them, and I sincerely appreciate it. And then I want to try and get in as many things as I have here. Actually, it looks like I think I got all the questions. So yeah, I'm going to finish with Darko's comment. His first comment here. Let me hit them both. His first comment was, I like this. Soap opera photography on YouTube is making me ill. I love that phrase. I may have to steal that from you, Darko. We all need to stick to photography, our own photography. Get better with your own biz, use the gear that helps your biz, and stop screwing around with the fake news. I probably could not have said it better, right? I mean, what I try to explain to people these days and kind of the way that I approach it, especially with young photographers that reach out and talk to me, always remember one thing, folks. Always remember why you picked up a camera the very first time and never let go of it, ever. Maybe the very first time was to photograph a child, a daughter, a kid, whatever. That's fine, but even if you go on to shoot architecture, remember what the joy was that first time in photographing the kids. Find time to photograph more kids, or even in your architecture, find things about it that give you that same sense of satisfaction, that same thrill, that same joy. If you can't, then you're photographing the wrong stuff, right? You just are. So for all of this stress, and believe me, we certainly have many things to cause us stress today, but for all the stress, for all this crap that we do here, just remember why. And again, I want to be really, really clear, because I am very pleased and very optimistic, because I really did not think the blogs would report on my video. I could certainly understand why they'd say, you know, screw him, he's been really giving us grief. I intend to keep giving them grief. I want to hold them accountable. But I said it when I was giving them grief. I've said it tonight. I'll say it again. I want to be really clear. Those blogs, they're also an important part of our photography community. They are a very, very valuable resource. I just want to see us all make sure that they know we don't want the crap. We don't want the anxiety-driving stuff. We don't want any of the sky is falling stuff. Stick to the news. Stick to the stuff that actually helps us all advance our abilities and our careers, whether that career is for fun or for profit as a photographer. So anyway, gang, as always, thank you for listening. If you are part of my mentoring program, Friday night we'll be doing our Zoom chat. If you're not a part of my mentoring program, you should check it out. Link is in the description below the video. And otherwise, I will see you guys next Wednesday. If all goes well, fingers crossed, I will have a short video coming out before then. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, guys, as always, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TOGCHAT. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.